Right. Welcome everyone to the March meeting of the International Consortium of Minority Cybersecurity Professionals Bay Area chapter meeting. And this month we are recognizing Women's History Month. So I want to first welcome you all. And as we go through our meeting today, you'll get to meet the rest of the leadership team. But first, I'd like to kick it off in the spirit of Women's History Month. One of the interesting things that I'm seeing is that women in computing jobs have been declining since the late 80s, early 90s. We were about 36% of jobs in computing were held by women then, but it's been on a steady decline. And as of 2016, we're down to 26% of computing jobs held by women. That is not the case in cybersecurity. In cybersecurity in 2013, women made up 11% of the cyber workforce, but in 2019, that number is up to 20%. Now, granted, that's still not a good number, but the encouraging thing is that it is increasing. And we have a very, very exciting speaker who can speak to those opportunities with us today. And I'm going to turn it over to Monique to introduce our first speaker.
Can everyone hear me okay? Great. Let me set up my screen, ready to go. Hold on one second.
While we're doing that, I probably should have just really quickly gone through the agenda. After we hear from our guest speaker, Masha, I'm sorry, her slide is getting Sova. We'll hear from her, and then after that, we're going to have a tech talk from Youssef Said. Saed, let me pronounce that correctly. And this, we hope it will be an interactive opportunity for you all here. And I would recommend right now too, for all of you, just, normally if we were all together, we'd be networking. I encourage you to do that in the chat. Your name, your LinkedIn URL, let's get some interaction going there as well. So again, I'll turn it back over to you, Monique.
Great, thanks so much. And we wanted to do something special to celebrate Women History Month. And I thought about it. You have to know where you're coming from to know where you're going to. But it's also important to acknowledge those women who are making history right now and to utilize that energy so we can all synergize and think about how we can actually be creating history now in our own lives and in what we do. So with that, I wanted to introduce Masha Sidova. I spoke with her a couple of times. She is a phenomenal person in what she's doing, what she has done, and where she's going. So I want to make sure Masha is on, and then we'll get started. Now, before we start to talk with Masha, which we would have a quick impromptu interview with, we want to acknowledge some other women who are doing great things in history now. So we have Alyssa Abdullah Johnson, Wendell Snyder, Anne Barron de Camillo, Katie Mezuris, and then at the end, we'll talk with Masha. Alyssa Abdullah Johnson, she is actually the Deputy Security Officer and SVP of Cyber Technology at MasterCard. And that's great in and of itself. But did you know she was the Deputy CIO at the White House during the Obama era? She modernized the infrastructure for the White House, Camp David, and the Air Force. And I think that's a great feat that I just didn't know about, and I thought it was really important to call out. We have Wendell Snyder, who was the CISO for Fastly and the VP of Platform Security at Intel. And she's also co-authored a book on threat modeling. And she's one of those movers and shakers that is doing a lot today as well. Then we have Anne Baron DiCamillo, the Managing Director for Global Head of Cyber Operations at Citi, and she was the Vice President of Cyber Threat Intelligence and Incident Response at American Express. And so those are just great positions and things of power doing something to, I would say, help all of us, because I'm sure a lot of people out in the audience actually have an American Express card. So that's important. And then we have Katie Mesouris, and she's the founder and CEO of her own startup, Luda Security, which specializes in business management for vulnerability disclosure programs and bug bounty programs. So in that light of startups and Luda Security, I want to talk about and introduce Marsha. She has one of the fastest growing companies and startups out there today. And guess what? It specializes in cybersecurity, and one of those elements that a lot of companies kind of overlook because they go toward technology. It's securing the human to make sure that we know how to identify risk and how we can actually get people to be more secure in what they do. Because the majority of different breaches we experience start off with the human, something that someone did. And she is addressing this particular, I think of it as a gap that hasn't really been addressed before. So not only that, because I could go on all day about Marsha, but also she's been actually nominated and won the Top Woman in Cloud Now Award 2019, the Top Woman in Cybersecurity 2017 Cyberscoop, Top Woman in Internet Security 2017 and Capsula. I could go on and on and on, but we want to hear her talk, and I'm going to ask her a few questions. And so we can just find out what she's doing to achieve all these different things and even her vision of where we'll be going tomorrow. Marsha, do you want to say a few words before I start the interview?
Thank you so much for that intro, Monique. It really makes me blush. I'm not sure it's coming over on Zoom, but thank you so much for that intro. And it is an honor to be on the list of with some of those amazing women that you just went through. All of them are trailblazing, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you so much. So we'll start off the interview because we want to learn more about you, about what you've done to get to where you are. And there might be some nuggets that we can take away in our own lives to help propel us into the future and to be even more successful.
Sounds
So
great.
that first question, how did you start your career to break into the cybersecurity field? How did that happen?
Yeah. So I grew up as an immigrant from initially the Soviet Union to the United States. My grandmother was the first graduating class of programmers in 1954 in the Soviet Union. She taught my dad how to code, and my dad taught me how to code. And growing up sort of in that kind of environment, but also as an immigrant, I like to be told that I can't do something and prove people wrong. That's kind of been one of my my guiding internal principles for some time. And frankly, cybersecurity, especially when I started in the mid 2000s, was such a new field, and really it was people were still trying to figure out what it was. You couldn't get a career, you couldn't get a degree in it, and it felt so new. Like there was so much room for discovery there that I wanted to be part of creating this industry and this field. And so the first time I heard about it was actually a radio ad that was trying to recruit security specialists to go work for the government. And I was still, I think I must have been 16 at the time, and it just rung in my ears and said, that's kind of the thing I want to get into. And I remember I just started asking everybody I knew, do you know how to break into this field? Do you know people doing work? And slowly over time, I got introduced to a couple of people. I found a program in a school called CyberCore that helped me get some training on it, and I was off to the races.
Great. That's very inspiring. And also in light of the fact that at ICMCP, we have a lot of different certification and cybersecurity learning programs that we're offering to help people to propel themselves into the field as well. So I know more on that later, but that was a great plug. Teachable moment, had to throw it out there.
Great.
Now, next, what are some strategies you've learned that can help women achieve a more prominent role in their organization? So how did you rise up? How does that work?
Yeah. I have 3 things I've learned along the way that I wanted to share. When you do work and when you do the great work that you do, spend time talking about it. For every 60 minutes of work that like you've allocated, spend 50 minutes working and spend 10 minutes sharing, teaching, and telling people about the work that you're doing. I find often women, but also this can be applied to everybody, don't do enough self-promotion, right? You'll think that if you do hard work and keep your head down, people will notice and it'll happen. But you have to be your biggest advocate. And when you do great work, make sure people know about it. People know the impact of your work. So that's the first step. The second one, build your brand. Know what you want to be known for. I'm listening to a book about positioning and category creation recently, and they had a great quote and it said, position yourself or be positioned. Where do you see yourself growing into? And start talking about yourself as if you're already there, right? So hold yourself in that light of where you want to go and believe that you are moving in that direction. So that is a really important thing. And building your brand, what do you want to be known for, right? Find the niche that you would like to carve out in security, and how you'd like to make a difference, and start talking about it. Start having conversations, connecting with the industry leaders in this space. So become known for something. And then the last thing is ask for sponsorship. In my mind and my experience, sponsorship is not the same thing as mentorship. Sponsorship is when someone who has access or information to something one step ahead of where you are right now. Maybe they're above your career, or they've gone through a successful negotiation, but ask for their help in a specific use case. Ask for them to put your name in the hat at a table that they may already be sitting at. And that's how you get pulled up. And that exists for both men and women. So don't just limit your pool of sponsorship to other women or people who are like you. Ask for everyone, ask of anyone who feels like they might extend a branch and help you out, because I've gotten to where I am in my career because people have vouched for me.
Great. That's wonderful, wonderful information. Just want to make sure everyone can still see my screen. Seems a little way, but we'll keep going with the interview.
Great.
Next, what are some strategy that you've learned that can help women achieve a more prominent role in the organization? I think we did that one. My screen froze. That's what it is. Hold on one second. Let me go back to the next question. Here. So where did you and do you get your inspiration to help push you forward during those times when you have had to motivate yourself? Because a lot of times we get inspiration from others, but there are those moments where you're there by yourself trying to make things happen, and you need to kind of help self-motivate. So what do you do in those moments?
Yeah, there've definitely been periods of time in my career where maybe I'm the only woman at the table or in the classroom. And there are times in my career, especially work we're doing now, where trying to create, frankly, a new category where people think about measuring and influencing employee risk, not just from awareness and training, but actually as a measurement tool. And sometimes I'm the only one who's even thought about something like this. And I think about not the challenge that's in front of me, but where do I want to be at the end of the challenge? Like, why am I at this table? Like, why am I having this conversation? And what am I in this for? And I have to tell you, one of the reasons that I started the company that Elevate Security that we did today is not just because I want to change the field of cybersecurity from the challenge that we're doing and like the technical perspective, but the company that we're building looks and acts and feels different than other security companies. Diversity is really critical, and I wanted to make sure that I was leading the way in a totally different approach. And on the days that are hard, I don't think about why it's hard for me, but what kind of opportunities I leave behind me. One of my really good friends asked me a question the other day, and said, this is how I orient my actions. Like, what kind of ancestor will I be? And I think about that often. It's not necessarily about the opportunities I'm creating for me, but what are the opportunities I'm creating for people who are coming behind me? And that really helps me get through some really hard stuff sometimes.
That's a great one. It's almost a flip of the you have to know where you're coming from to know where you get to, but it's
That's it.
thinking about, hey, how can I actually set this so people really have something to that I can set, make a particular presence known, so people do have something to latch on to so they can go forward. That's
Yeah,
great.
I mean, we are where we are because our predecessors and our ancestors hustled hard and fought and pushed, and we have to we're spiraling upwards and there's no stopping us, and that's far we're taking our place in the journey right now.
This is true. This is true. So I have to keep that in mind. Now, the last question we have, and then we're going with the program. What is your vision for the future of cybersecurity and the opportunities you see forthcoming? So kind of set that stage of what you think will
Yeah.
happen, is going to happen, and then it'll help us to know what to anticipate.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to answer this question in two parts. So one of them is how we solve for security. Right now, we as a security industry think about security as being a lot of technical challenges, and it is. But if we take a far enough step back, it's actually people attacking people with a lot of technology in the middle. And I think if we take that kind of perspective, we understand there's so many elements to security that we need to take into consideration. And as long as we keep turning away from the human element of security, both the employees that are part of our networks and organizations that make decisions, and as long as we keep calling them the weakest link, we are leaving a huge opportunity unaddressed, because the most robust and resilient organizations that I've seen are the ones that get everybody on the same side of the rope and pulling together. And that's not necessarily as much of a technical challenge as it is one that relates to psychology and organizational change and motivation, which kind of brings me to my second point, which is I see that the way that security continues to evolve and grow as a field is that we start thinking about this problem in a lot of different dimensions. One of the reasons why I think security has the challenges it does today is because it was built by a lot of engineers with really technical focuses. And frankly, it's a really young industry. So we haven't really had a lot of iterations and learnings on this. And I think as an industry, we would benefit from diversity of background and experiences and pulling people who have different points of view and perspectives that they can bring to security to start solving some of our challenges. I just talked about psychology being some of it, making security more usable, right? None of us particularly enjoy remembering thousands of long passwords. And yet, while it is secure, it is not usable. And that is a much different challenge that we've actually designed for in architecture and in hardware, but we've not learned from other industries and brought it into security. And so if we can open up our doors and bring in other perspectives, people who have come from different disciplines